Hi everyone, this is IMUR, and I'm going to do a little tutorial on turning Massive here into your own little electronic drum kit. It hasn't really been that useful in practice, but I've always found that with experimentation you learn a lot more about the software, and it can kind of help you come up with ideas later and at least help you better understand all the functions of it. So basically what we're going to be doing is using the oscillators, the noise generator, a little bit of modulation, and the filters, along with some of the totally awesome performer functions to create a kick drum, snare drum, and a hi-hat part. So the first thing we're going to do is create a little note here and turn the volume down. Doesn't matter which one, we're not going to be using the original pitch anyway. Alright, so we have our pitch there. It's a nice little saw wave. We're going to go ahead and make the kick drum first. So we'll turn oscillator 1 into a sine wave. It is a beautiful sine wave. Now what we're going to do is go straight to the performer here. You can choose between the LFO stepper and performer in this little area right here. And we're going to go ahead and make little quarter note pulses here. This is just a start. You can change the pattern later. Then we're going to take the pitch of oscillator 1 and drag it all the way down to -64. And take our little crosshairs here and drag it to the pitch modulation input. And we're going to modulate it completely, so all the way up 64, back to the original octave, and then hit play and see what happens. All right, that's pretty close. Next thing we need to adjust is the rate. So we'll see, it's 1/16 already, so that's 16th notes. And we can already kind of see where it's going, but let's change it to 8th notes. Yeah, and you hear that little clicking in the background. It's because the crossfader is stuck in the center. The crossfader drags between the two different patterns that you can have in each of the performers. So we'll drag it all the way to the top. Much better. And of course you can play around with all the functions and find different oscillators, but I've always found that a sine wave kind of works the best. Alright, so we're going to leave that one alone for right now. We've got our kick drum for right now. Next we're going to go ahead and put in a little snare drum. Snare drums are a little bit tricky because we want to use the white noise for a hi-hat. That's pretty simple. We're forced to use an oscillator for the snare drum. So let's see right here. First off, we're going to tell it when to play. We're going to do that by modulating the amplitude of oscillator number 3. So we'll take LFO number 6, or modulator number 6 actually, which is stuck in LFO mode right now, but we'll go ahead and change that to another performer. And then we're going to put that on just the downbeats. Oop. Alright, and we'll sync that up to 8th notes as well. Same thing with the crossfader. Oops. Doesn't sound a whole lot like a snare drum right now. But there is something we can do about that. Let's try Frozen. I think that worked pretty well. Then let's set it to formant and put the rest of the settings for the oscillator, these other two, the wavetable position and the intensity, in the center, because we're going to modulate them as well. And then let's go into this LFO here and find a random step. This one looks pretty random. So we're going to go ahead and modulate the intensity, the wavetable position, and the pitch of oscillator 3. That's okay. Let's turn the rate up. This one you got to play around with a bunch. That's pretty snary. All right. Next thing we got to do is let's set our outputs now. We're going to send oscillator 3 all the way to filter 2 and set oscillator 1 all the way to filter 1. And then we got to set the mix in the center, otherwise you'll only hear one at a time. Or neither. Oh, I see. I don't know if it's just my massive or everyone's, but it always has some kind of little quirk to it every time I load up a new patch. Anyway, moving right along, let's try modulating our snare drum a little bit, just using the modulation oscillator. So we'll choose number 3 here. And it's up to you to find out, you know, what positions work best. I found that whenever I do tutorials, it always winds up sounding completely different anyway. But that's the beauty of using soft synths. All right, so now we're going to make our hi-hat. The hi-hat's relatively simple, actually. A lot of old-fashioned drum machines just use white noise and an envelope and some filters to make it. And we're going to do the exact same thing here. We're going to send the white noise all the way to filter 2, and you'll see why at the end when I start putting the filters in. But this last number 7, the number 7 modulator, which we haven't used yet, is going to be a performer as well. But this one's going to be a little bit different. We're going to set this one to 16th notes right here, and we're just going to do every other one to start with. And we're going to use that to modulate the amplitude of our white noise. You should hear it right away. Yeah, it's coming through both right now. And right away, that's a pretty good hi-hat sound. Let's try the bright noise. Alright. And with the hi-hat, you can do kind of cool stuff like put some ghost notes in. And let's change around the kick pattern a little bit too to make it a little bit cooler. That's pretty good. Alright, now let's bring out the kick a little bit more with a low pass filter. We'll put on low pass, and we're going to modulate the cutoff with the same exact performer that we're using to modulate the pitch of oscillator 1. So right here, and you can use the resonance to create nice filter sweeps, which when they're occurring this quickly kind of sound like a little pop. So you adjust the modulation amount as desired. All right. That's pretty close. Not bad for one oscillator and a filter. All right, now let's put a little high pass on our hi-hat and snare drum. It's kind of killing a lot of the snare drum though. So what I like to do sometimes is to add a little bit of dynamics I'll put a low pass on it, and then I'll use the snare performer. Turn the resonance down. And the hi-hat performer on the cutoff. And then play around with the two of them to sort of get some like interesting dynamic changes, which you can also do here in the performer itself. All right. You can also change the curves. And not digging that one too much. Let's try. Not bad. And then the automatic awesomeness effect, dimension expander. And a little bit of small reverb. Turn the density way up, because the reverb in Massive is basically a really high frequency delay, and the density is sort of a frequency adjustment for how often those delays occur. So the higher the density, the smoother the reverb. You can also play with feedback and stuff, but that can tend to get a little bit hairy. Yeah, that's our little drum kit. Then you can start playing around with the other oscillator too. We have one left still. Right now it's going through both filters. If we send it to just the first one, can't hear much because the low pass is cutting most of it out. But if we send it to both of them, and then you have a little bass line too, and you can send, let's see here, let's send the kick drum to the pitch. Kind of cool. And ring modulate it a little bit. Yeah, and that's our Massive drum kit. Once again, this is IMUR. Thank you very much for listening, and have fun.